Shabbos, everybody.
Good Shabbos.
Shabbos.
I had a friend of mine. There's different customs about how to wear the tzitzis. Not only the outer talis, also the talis cotton that we wear. Some people wear on top of the shirt, some people wear under the shirt. Some people tuck in the tzitzis, some people let the tzitzis hang out but have the garment under the shirt. All different customs. The Sephardic custom generally today follows the Kabbalistic idea that it should be totally hidden, and then it's inside the garment, which is interesting because the Shulchan Aruch says it should be on the outside. It's one of the rare times where the Hasidim in general follow the Shulchan Aruch, who was Sephardic, and the Sephardim follow the Kabbalists, also were Sephardic, where the Arizal was half Ashkenazic and half Sephardic. So we have these different approaches. And a friend of mine who's Sephardic, he, for a brief time, attended college. We were in yeshiva together in a few different yeshivas. And a big scholar, he's a rabbi now, great neck. And he said that when he was in college, a fellow came up to him who wasn't Jewish, and he pointed at his tzitzis. He said, "Oh, I know, that's tzitzit." He knew what it was. So I said, "But I'm not sure, what's this? I thought the Sephardic custom is you don't wear the tzitzis hanging out." He said, Chacham Avadia, who passed away a year or two ago, was a big leading halachic decider in the Sephardic world, and he said that if you need it for chizuk, if you need it for encouragement, to feel stronger, you're allowed to wear it on the outside. It comes a very interesting point. We have in the Ethics of the Fathers a very interesting passage. It says, Rabbi Yehuda ben Tema, he suggests we should emulate the example given by 4 different animals. It says, "Hevi oz kenomer," a person should be bold. That term could be translated into arrogant, like a leopard. If you ever go to Claus and Paws in Pennsylvania, you ever been there to Claus and Paws? Pennsylvania, never been there? They have the animals right up, get very close to them. They're in small cages, which is not maybe so nice, I don't know, but I guess they know what they're doing, I assume. Seems to us, but probably it's okay, I would assume. And it's very interesting. You get right up, you see right in the face a lion, a leopard, and leopards will roar at you right in your face. Leopards are very bold. I mean, that's what I saw there at the zoo. And Rabbi Yehuda ben Tema, his suggestion we should be bold like a leopard. Then he has a few other suggestions. We should be Hevi oz kenomer, Gibor ka'ari, mighty like a lion, Ratz k'tzvi, run like a deer, Kal k'nesher, light like an eagle, Ratz k'tzvi, run like a deer, Gibor ka'ari, and strong like a lion, Lasis k'tzvi b'shamayim, to fulfill the will of your Father in heaven. That's what Rabbi Yehuda ben Tema teaches in the Mishnah. So, and right away, the next statement, also quoting Rabbi Yehuda ben Tema, says, "Hu haya omer." He used to say, he says, "Azei panim legehinnom, goyishes panim legan eden." That brazen, bold-faced people, arrogant people, they go to Gehinnom, to purgatory or hell, however you want to translate it, and shame-faced people, they go to heaven. So what's going on here? He says, you should be bold, but then he says the bold-faced people go to hell. So which is it? Should you be bold? Shouldn't you be bold? Yehuda ben Tema lived close to 2,000 years ago, maybe more. Can see all the commentaries throughout the years. A more recent commentary, only about 200 years ago, the holy Rebbe Zusha. Rebbe Zusha was a very colorful figure. He always referred to himself in the third person. He never said I, he always said Zusha, or Zisha, maybe probably how he pronounced it. And he was a very humble person, and he always had interesting things to say, and his brother was very famous also, Rebbe Elimelech from Lezhensk. They would travel together. It happened once that when he was already older, the Rebbe Zisha lived a very difficult life, and there was a few young rabbis. They asked their Rebbe, the Rebbe Dov Ber from Mezrich, said, "How do we understand it says in the Talmud and Brachos, you should thank God for the bad the same like you thank Him for the good? How can you do that? I understand, right? You have to acknowledge God all the time. How do you accomplish that? You know, all right. So it says you have to do it. You have to do it. Not questioning it. But how do you do it?" So he said, "This answer I can't answer." He said, "You have to go to my student, Rebbe Zusha." They saw how he was living in such pain and poverty. He had a very difficult life. His wife was very rude to him often, all kinds of things. And he lived, you could see what kind of painful life he lived. And they asked him, they said, the Rebbe Dov Ber, the Maggid, said that we should ask the Rebbe Zusha, how do we accomplish this, to thank God for the bad, the same we thank Him for the good? The Rebbe Zusha said, asking Zusha how to accomplish this, I don't have any experience in this. Nothing bad ever happened in my life. Everything God has done only been good. That's what it means. So the same Rebbe Zusha, he commented on this passage just to get an idea of who we're talking about. You know, I remember I was in Ukraine visiting the graves of different old Rebbes, and there was one young man who was on the trip. He had left the path of observance, but he was looking for something spiritual, and he came to this trip. We happened to be on the bus together, and we planned on the trip to stop by the Rebbe Zusha to visit his grave. And whatever happened, some of the other young men on the trip, they would miss their plane. If we would go there, we weren't able to make it. And this one fellow, they were all Hasidim. This one boy, he grew up in a Hasidic home, he left. I don't know, Hasidic or Orthodox home. And he was so disappointed, couldn't go to Rebbe Zusha. They said, "Well, why? What's the difference?" They said, "These other guys I don't know, but I know the Rebbe Zusha. He knows the stories. He knows who he is." I was also disappointed, but to hear that gave an insight to who this person was. That it could impact anybody. I even remember on YouTube seeing videos, non-Jewish people that were so impressed by all the stories of Rebbe Zusha, telling over these stories, and really struck with their heart. So one of his teachings said that this passage which says that the brazen-faced people go to Gehenna, he said, doesn't mean as a punishment. It means here in this world, if someone is proud of who they are, they're not holding back, they're not ashamed, they're not hiding who they are, they're proud of who they are, they could go anywhere and not get affected by it. If someone's proud to be a Jew, doesn't matter where he goes. He could go trying to, there's one rabbi in Israel, Rabbi Grossman. He would go to nightclubs and bars and try to bring everyone, almost everyone in Israel, Jewish. So he wanted to bring them back to Judaism. So he goes into the places where no religious person would step foot. Why? To bring out people to teach. I remember when I was in Virginia, Lahavdil was a pastor. He told me, he would go to bars and try to teach Bible classes and stuff, so it's not just he was a Pentecostal preacher. Rabbi Grossman did the same thing. He would go and pick up, because he's proud of who he is. He's not going to get lost. He's not going to get drawn away. If someone is not sure, someone is timid, someone is shy, it could very easily be drawn away. They should just stay in the Bismedrash, stay in the heaven, stay in the shul, stay in the yeshiva. Don't leave, because they wouldn't make it outside. But if they're proud of who they are, and they're strong, they can go anywhere. It doesn't matter. And they can bring people back. That's that idea. We see in this week's Parsha, at the beginning, they send out the spies. They tell them, find out, what kind of cities are they living in? Are they cities with walls around them, with fortified cities, or are they open cities? And they come back with a report. Oh, they're very that same word. They're very bold. They're very strong. They're fortified cities. But commentators say they got it wrong, because the fact that they're fortified cities shows that they're wimps. They could be beaten very easily. The ones you got to be worried about are the guys who don't feel they need a fence. They don't need a fort. They could beat everybody back. They could win a war without any fortification. But if it's a fort, who knows who's in there? Is it Corporal Agard from F Troop, going to knock it down and whatever? It would be very easy to take him there. So that's that same idea, I think. When this fellow, you would think, oh, you're stronger by hiding who you are. Like a lot of philosophers say, be a Jew in your home and be a human being on the street. You don't have to flaunt who you are. It's not true. And just people, if they can't manage without this, they must be very weak. It's not true. A lot of times there's more strength in being proud of who the person is, and not hiding, not being ashamed. And so too, in this case, even though, in general, this fellow, he would follow his custom, he wouldn't necessarily be dressing like this, but because he was in a place where he needed more strength, and needed more encouragement, he needed that azus de kedusha, he needed that holy pride, that holy Jewish pride. But what's that holy Jewish pride? Is that tzitzis, that God is our God, that we remember His commandments. So we say we should see them and remember that God is our God. That's the whole point. Jewish pride isn't about that we're proud that Einstein was a genius and he was Jewish and Three Stooges were funny and we're Adam Sandler now wherever. So we're proud that we're Jewish because they're also Jewish. That's not what it's about. Not that there's anything wrong with that. But we're really proud of that we're servants of God. That's what we're proud of. When we look at the tzitzis and we remember that pride, we can let it be out. We can let it be for the whole world. We're not afraid. We're open. We're not fortified. We're not hiding who we are behind some walls. We have our tzitzis out. We have our talis out. People, the whole world can see that we're not afraid. Ultimately, though, the whole point here is to remember God. The Kotzker Rebbe, who's a Rebbe in Poland, the Kotzker Rebbe, who's very sharp and very dedicated to truth. He didn't. People used to wait outside just to hear him curse them out and tell them what sinners they are. He would hide in his room for a long time and come out the window, and the people would be waiting just to hear that. The Kotzker taught that any mitzvah could be made into idolatry. People forget what's the purpose of it. They're just doing things for some ulterior motive. Not that there's anything necessarily always wrong with an ulterior motive. An ulterior motive can sometimes be a tool to get a person into the right path. If that's part of the person's plan, and he realizes he's having a hard time with something, but maybe some ulterior motive will open up and bring him. Other times, no, not ready. But other times, a person might just totally have ulterior motives and not be authentic. And the message really is that a person has to realize whatever he does, God is involved. That's why when we do mitzvahs, we should see the tzitzis, and not just be for oh, look at me, I'm Jewish, you know. No, it's because of God. Everything has to be about God. And that way, things get better. And that's also the message we see. After what happened, the spies came back with a bad report. So God said, it's not, people think, they were wandering in the desert for 40 years because Moses didn't want to ask directions, No, they were there already. They were ready to go in. They came back with this report. We're dealing here with giants. We can't manage with them. We can't beat them. So we're going to have to, we'll just give up. We'll go back to Egypt. Moses gave to Joshua the name Joshua. His name was Hosea. He gave him the letter Yud from Hashem's name to make it from Hosea to Yehoshua. Satmar Rebbe says the reason for that was because Joshua was the opposite of all the other spies that were sent. The other spies, they wanted to stay in the desert. Why? Because they had leadership roles, and they would lose their leadership roles if they went into the Holy Land. Joshua was just opposite. He was humble and submissive to his teacher Moses. And he knew once they entered the Holy Land, he would attain a leadership role, which he did. And we read about it in the Haftarah today. So Moses had to give a letter from God's name to Joshua. This way, he would have that holy arrogance. He was too humble, and the others were too arrogant. The whole point that was missing there is that anything could be used in the right way or the wrong way. Similarly, so people, they decided, all right, they toured for 40 days throughout the Holy Land, and God said for each day that they toured, that they spied, and they brought back a bad report, they'd have to wander in the desert for 40 years. But meanwhile, so then the decree was made. So then some of the people said, oh, all right, we're sorry, we'll go in. And God said, no, it's too late. It's not the time. Everything has to be on God's schedule. We can't just make up things that we think is right when God said it's not the right time for things. And that's a lot of it. And what happened? They went in. Moses said it won't be successful. And they were knocked down. If someone thinks they can just go and take over the Holy Land, there's a lack of success there. And we see all the lack of success because of this. Because God said, wait, God's going to send Mashiach, it's going to come the right time. Because this whole, if an idea is removed from holiness and from devotion to God, it loses everything. And that's why we need the tzitzis to remind us all the time. Even though there's not an obligation to wear tzitzis, unless you're wearing a four-cornered garment. Many Jews go out of their way to wear a four-cornered garment just to do a mitzvah, even though they don't have to. That's the message of the tzitzis, It's a message just for all times and all places. Tefillin is an obligation to wear. Tzitzis is not. And yet tefillin we can't wear on Shabbos, and tzitzis we do. We read it in this week's Parshat also about someone who was collecting wood on Shabbos. He got stoned because of this. Why? And the sages actually say that he did it for a good reason. Because he wanted people to know how important Shabbos was. He wanted to make a statement even of martyrdom for the sake of Shabbos. But in any event, in the Medrash, teachings of Elijah the prophet, the Tanakh Eliyahu, says that the people they didn't have a reminder for Shabbos. Tefillin, they had a reminder. Can you imagine? That tzitzis. So that's why the Tanakh Eliyahu says that's why tzitzis were given. We could even have on Shabbos. Imagine such a thing. That was such a mighty, powerful sign of Shabbos. Still, we need a reminder because ultimately, everything we need a reminder. There was a story. There were two rabbis who were sitting, studying, and one told the other, if you have a feeling that in my studies I get so enraptured in the subject matter that I forget that this is for God, that this is devotion to God, and it just becomes intellectual study, I want you to touch my hand to remind me. and he noticed something, and he was just about to pat his hand to remind him to remember about God. And he said, all right, I remember already. I almost forgot, but you reminded me. There was the Rebbe, Lady Yitzchak Berditchev. He once called everyone into the shul. They were all religious, very religious. He said, every man, woman, child has to be in shul. I have a very important announcement. What was the announcement? I want you to remember that God exists. That's it. It's so easy to forget through all the things, to get bogged down, not to see the forest through the trees. And the tzitzis come back again and again as a reminder to us to see the forest through the trees and to recognize that our strength comes only from God. And so we don't need to hide, and we don't need to be worried, we don't need to be ashamed. We just said Machadodi. Lo seivoshu, lo seikomu, matish techachu, matish tehemi. Don't be ashamed, don't be embarrassed. What's wrong? The poor people have trust in you. The poor of my people have trust in you. Every Jew, we're all lacking something, but when we have that trust, we get returned back. And in that schus, in that merit, that we remember God, not just we take things for granted. In that way, we can be worthy to see the city rebuilt in its original place, to see Jerusalem back, restored, the Jerusalem that's now in heaven, the temple that's now in heaven, to come down to earth, and everything will be like everything's supposed to be, and everything will be fixed, and there should be peace in the whole world, and everything should be good. Good Shabbos.